Isabella's silent escape. The sound of a life lost. Have you ever wondered what happens when a perfect life crumbles into absolute silence? Isabella, the pregnant wife of millionaire Liam Sterling, had everything a woman could ever dream of. But one day, she vanished without a trace, leaving only an echo. While Liam's ambitious mistress, Clara, celebrated her victory, she never imagined that the man who had everything would break down and weep, not for a lost possession, but for a love he never knew he had. This is the story of how a silent departure created the loudest roar, proving that true wealth is not what you own, but what you cannot bear to lose. Don't let this story disappear. Hit like now and subscribe to our channel. Do you believe that true love can be found only after losing everything? Comment your opinion. Bye. The gold-plated cage. The afternoon sun, the color of expensive champagne, streamed through the penthouse windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like carefree spirits. Isabella Sterling watched them from her velvet chaise lounge, one hand resting protectively on the gentle swell of her abdomen. 7 months pregnant, her body was a landscape of change, a testament to the new life she nurtured within. The baby, her son, was the only pure and unsullied thing in this gilded cage. From the outside, her life was an object of profound envy. She was the wife of Liam Sterling, a man whose ambition had forged a formidable empire in the ruthless world of corporate real estate. Their home, a sprawling duplex overlooking Central Park in Manhattan, was a monument to his success, filled with art that was more an investment than a passion, and furniture, too beautiful to be truly comfortable. Her reflection in the polished chrome of a nearby sculpture was warped, a funhouse version of the woman she was supposed to be. Serene, fulfilled, radiant. Instead, she saw the faint violet shadows beneath her eyes that no concealer could hide, and a tension in her jaw that bespoke 1,000 unshed tears. The silence of the apartment was a living entity, broken only by the distant, muffled symphony of New York traffic. It was a silence that had grown over the years, seeping into the cracks of their marriage until it became its very foundation. Liam was not a cruel man, not in the conventional sense. He didn't raise his voice or his hand. His cruelty was that of abandonment, a slow, soul-crushing indifference that was far more damaging. He saw her not as a partner, but as his most beautiful acquisition, a final, polished piece to complete the portrait of his success. He adorned her with diamonds, but never with his time. He filled her closet with designer clothes, but never inquired about the woman wearing them. He had provided the sperm for their son with the same detached efficiency he applied to a business transaction, a necessary step to secure his legacy. Her phone buzzed on the marble side table, a social blog notification, a photo of Liam taken last night at a gallery opening. She had been too fatigued to attend. He was laughing, his head tilted toward a stunning redhead in a green silk dress. Isabella zoomed in. Clara Vega, a promising architect Liam's firm had recently hired. She was sharp, ambitious, and exuded the kind of predatory drive Isabella recognized, because she herself had held it long ago. Isabella had seen the lingering looks, the late-night texts disguised as work, the scent of a different perfume on his suit jackets. She was not foolish. She closed her eyes and, instead of anger, returned to her messy little apartment in the Lower East Side years ago. A younger Isabella, a law student with fire in her belly and a fierce belief in justice, dreamed of working for a non-profit, of being a voice for the voiceless. Then Liam had bulldozed into her life, a force of nature, dazzling her with his charm and the sheer magnitude of his world. She had mistaken his ambition for passion, his possessiveness for love. She had allowed herself to be molded, polished, and placed on this pedestal, slowly forgetting the woman she had intended to be. The fire had been reduced to an ember, and now she feared it was almost out. But the baby changed everything. His small flutters against her ribs were a constant reminder of a life beyond this suffocating luxury. He deserved more than a mother who was a ghost in her own home, and a father who was a stranger. He deserved authenticity, warmth, and a love that wasn't transactional. And she deserved to be the woman who could give him that. That night, Liam came home late, smelling of scotch and Clara's jasmine perfume. He gave Isabella a perfunctory kiss on the forehead. His eyes were already fixed on the stock ticker blinking on the television. "How was your day?" he asked. The question was a reflex, not a genuine inquiry. "Quiet," she replied, her voice even. "Finished arranging the nursery." "Good. Did you order the antique rocking horse from the catalog I left you?" "Yes," she lied. In fact, she had canceled the obscenely expensive order and donated the equivalent amount to a children's hospital. It was a small, secret act of rebellion, but it felt like a monumental victory. He grunted contentedly, loosening his tie. "I close the Hartwell deal tomorrow. It's going to be huge. We should celebrate this weekend, maybe a trip to Miami." He spoke of us, but she knew it was barely an us. She was merely the accompanying accessory. He would spend the weekend glued to his phone, giving orders, while she was expected to sit poolside and look content. She watched him move around the room, a handsome, powerful stranger who shared her bed. The love she once felt had long soured into a hollow ache, which had finally given way to a cold, hard clarity. Ambition, she now understood, could be a cancer. It had consumed him, and it had nearly consumed her. But no more. Later that night, as he slept beside her, in the deep, dreamless sleep of the unburdened, Isabella lay awake, charting her course. Her plan had been months in the making, a secret project of escape. She had been discreetly diverting cash from her allowance into a new account under her maiden name, a name he had probably forgotten. She had researched towns, small and insignificant, places where Mrs. Sterling would never be looked for. She had packed a single suitcase, hidden in the back of her cavernous closet, filled not with designer clothes, but practical items, sentimental treasures, and a copy of an old law textbook she hadn't opened in years. She was not fleeing in a fit of pique. This was a rescue mission. She was rescuing her son from a life of gilded emptiness, and she was rescuing herself from oblivion. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no shouting. That wasn't her style, and it would give him a fight to win. She would simply vanish. An elegant, silent act of disappearance. He would wake one morning, and a piece of his perfect life, his most cherished possession, would simply be gone. Let him rage against the silence. Let the mistress believe she had won. Isabella knew the truth. She was finally setting herself and her son free. 2. The silent disappearance. Liam Sterling woke to the insistent, scheduled whir of his automatic shades retracting. Light flooded the master suite, glinting on the chrome accents and cold glass surfaces he favored. He rolled over, his hand seeking the warm space beside him, and found only cool, crisp Egyptian cotton. He frowned. Isabella was usually the one to wake him, a soft hand on his shoulder, a cup of coffee already waiting on the nightstand. She clung to these small domestic rituals with a quiet tenacity he found both endearing and faintly pathetic. He sat up, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed. "Isabella?" he called, his voice thick with sleep. The silence that answered was absolute, deep. It was different from the usual morning quiet. It felt heavy, deliberate. He strode through the suite, toward the spacious walk-in closet, his side meticulously organized, but somehow looking untouched. He checked the master bath with its twin marble sinks. Her toothbrush was gone. A tiny detail, insignificant, but it sent a strange prickle of unease down his spine. He descended the floating glass staircase to the main living area. The penthouse was flawless as always. The cleaning staff had been in yesterday, but the air was still sterile. Her favorite cashmere throw was neatly folded on the divan, not artfully draped as she usually left it. The book she was reading was closed on the side table, a silver bookmark tucked precisely into the page where she had stopped. It was as if the room had been staged. On the gleaming white marble of the kitchen island, propped against a ridiculously expensive fruit bowl, was a single sheet of thick, cream-colored paper. It was her personal stationery, the kind she used for thank-you notes. His name, Liam, was written on the front in her elegant, looping hand. He picked it up, expecting a to-do list, a reminder about dinner. Instead, the note inside was brutally short. "I'm gone. Please don't look for me." That was all. No explanation, no recrimination, no signature. The words were stark against the creamy paper. He read it again, and then a third time, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. This had to be a joke, a badly conceived, melodramatic prank. Isabella wasn't impulsive. She was predictable, placid. She was the calm water to his storm. She wouldn't just leave, especially now, with the baby coming. His son, his heir. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over her contact photo. A smiling, sun-drenched shot from a trip to Italy 2 years ago. He looked happy. He dialed. It went straight to voicemail. "Isabella, this isn't funny," he said, his voice strained. "Call me back." Heiress. He tried her mother's number next. A pleasant but firm voice message informed him that Eleanor was on a 2-month cruise through the Norwegian fjords and would be unreachable. Convenient. Too convenient. Panic, an unknown and unwanted emotion, began to creep over him. He tore through the apartment, pulling open cabinets, sweeping back curtains as if she might be hiding behind them. The nursery, once a source of detached pride, now felt like a mausoleum. The tiny clothes, the artisanal crib, the silent mobile. They were all monuments to a future that had just been erased. He saw the empty space where the antique rocking horse should have been. A flash of memory. Him telling her to order it. Her quiet acceptance. He hadn't even bothered to check if it had arrived. His mind raced, checking possibilities. Kidnapped? No ransom note. No signs of forced entry. Medical emergency? He called the doorman, who confirmed Mrs. Sterling had left the building at 5 a.m., carrying a single suitcase. She had told him she was going to visit a friend in Boston for a few days. She had been calm, even smiling. The doorman hadn't thought twice. The cold knot in his stomach hardened to ice. She had planned this. The calm smile, the lie to the doorman, the timing with his mother's trip. This was a calculated, deliberate act. But why? Her life was perfect. He gave her everything. He was building an empire for their son. What more could she possibly want? His phone buzzed. It was Clara. "Thinking of you. Can't wait to celebrate the Hartwell deal tonight." A photo followed. A playful pout aimed at the camera from her sleek, minimalist office. For a moment, he had forgotten. The deal. The celebration. Clara. Did Isabella know about Clara? He had been careful, discreet. But Isabella was observant in her quiet way. Perhaps she wasn't as placid as he had thought. He felt a stab of anger, hot and sharp. How dare she? How dare she throw this in his face? To shame him? To disrupt his life when he was on the cusp of his greatest professional triumph? He typed a reply to Clara. Change of plans. Something came up with Isabella. Family matter. He needed to control the narrative. An unstable, emotional pregnant wife who needed them all on space. That was manageable. A wife who had abandoned him. That was a disaster. Clara called instantly. "Is everything okay, darling? Is it the baby?" Her voice was a perfect symphony of concern, but Liam could hear the underlying note of excitement. "She's fine. Just went to visit a friend for a few days. She's feeling overwhelmed." He lied. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "We'll have to postpone our celebration." "Oh, of course," Clara said. Her tone overflowed with sympathy. "Poor thing. Pregnancy can be so exhausting. Well, if she's gone for a few days, maybe I can pop over and cheer you up tonight. Just a little while." The offer was brazen, but it was exactly what he expected from her. It was part of what drew him to her. Her unapologetic ambition, her directness. She saw an opportunity, and she took it. In that moment, he had no energy to deal with her. "Not tonight, Clara. I need to handle this." "Okay, darling. Call me if you need anything, anything at all." He hung up and looked back at Isabella's note. "Please don't look for me." It wasn't a plea. It was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down. And Liam Sterling never, ever backed down from a challenge. He would not allow her to simply disappear, to take his son and vanish from his life. She was his wife. She was carrying his child. She belonged to him. The shock was hardening now into a cold, hard, diamond-like resolve. He would find her. He would bring her back. And then there would be a reckoning. He just had to figure out where the hell she could have gone. 3. The hunt and the hardening. One day bled into the next, then into a full, agonizing week. The initial shock and the rage that had fueled Liam for the first 48 hours began to sour into a nagging, unfamiliar anxiety. The sprawling penthouse, once a symbol of his dominance, now felt like an echo chamber. Every silent corner mocked him with Isabella's absence. He found himself wandering into the nursery, outlining the unused crib. The scent of lavender and baby powder she had chosen wafted in the air like a ghost, doing its job of making the unborn child real. He called her friends, the neat society wives he found bland and boring. All were surprised, offering rehearsed sympathies. No, they hadn't heard from Isabella. Yes, they had noticed she'd been more withdrawn lately. They had put it down to pregnancy hormones. Their words were useless. Their concern was a barely veiled appetite for gossip. He checked their joint bank accounts, untouched. He checked credit card statements. Her last purchase was a week ago, at a bookstore in the West Village. He went there himself, a man in a $1,000 suit looking terribly out of place among the dusty shelves. The cashier, a young woman with purple hair, vaguely remembered her. Yes, the sad, beautiful lady bought a stack of travel guides. Oregon, Washington, Maine, and some books on constitutional law. The detail was so bizarre, so out of place, that Liam dismissed it as a red herring. By the third day, his pride was sufficiently shattered for him to do what he should have done from the start. He hired the best private detective money could buy. Mr. Herrera was a former NYPD detective, a man with a reputation as a bloodhound and matching tired, cynical eyes. He sat opposite Liam in the sterile living room, his worn tweed jacket in stark contrast to the minimalist decor. She left her phone on the kitchen counter, disconnected from the network. Her laptop is in her office, wiped. Liam explained, the words clipped. She took one suitcase and her passport. She withdrew $5,000 in cash, the daily maximum, every day for the last 2 weeks from her personal account, an account I didn't know she had. The admission felt like swallowing glass. Herrera nodded slowly, taking notes in a small, leather-bound book. "Smart," he muttered, almost to himself. No digital trace. Cash. Your wife, Mr. Sterling, is either very scared or very clever. She's my wife, Liam snapped. She's pregnant with my son. Find her. The days that followed were a masterclass in frustration. Herrera's updates were grim and concise. Isabella hadn't used a credit card, booked a flight, or rented a car in her name. She hadn't crossed any borders. She had simply stepped out of a yellow cab near Grand Central Station and dissolved into the city's bustling anonymity. She had become a ghost. Meanwhile, Clara's patience was wearing thin. She had initially played the role of the sympathetic, supportive mistress, but her ambitions didn't allow for long-term postponement. She saw Isabella's disappearance as the final obstacle removed, and Liam's continued obsession with finding her was exasperating. "It's been over a week, Liam," she said one afternoon, running a manicured hand over his tense back as he stared out the window at the city lights. She had insinuated herself back into the penthouse, a territorial move he was too drained to dispute. "Don't you think it's time to consider she doesn't want to be found? Maybe she ran off with someone." "Don't be ridiculous," he scoffed. But the seed of doubt, poisonous and unwelcome, took root. Was it possible? Had her quietness been a cover for a secret life he knew nothing about? "Is it ridiculous?" Clara pressed, her voice silky smooth. "She was unhappy. You said so yourself. She's a beautiful woman. Maybe she found someone who could give her what you couldn't." "I gave her everything," Liam retorted, turning to meet her. "Did you?" Clara's eyes were sharp, intelligent. "You gave her things, Liam. A beautiful cage. Maybe she wanted to be seen, not just displayed." Her words cut too close to a truth he wasn't ready to face. He hated that she could read him so well. He pushed the thought away, focusing his anger back on Isabella. The betrayal felt sharper, more personal than any affair. An affair was simple carnal transgression. This was a repudiation of his entire life, his entire world. His work began to suffer. He was distracted in meetings, snapped at subordinates. His mind always drifted back to the enigma of his wife. Where was she? Was she safe? The baby? Was his son okay? The question echoed in the dead night, a terrifying whisper. He had always seen the child as a concept, a legacy. Now, for the first time, he felt a glimpse of something more, a primal protective fear. Herrera called at the end of the second week. "We traced a purchase made with a prepaid debit card, bought with cash near a small town in Ohio. A used laptop. The shipping address was a P.O. box in a rural area near Columbus. When my man got there, the box had been closed for a week. So we're still 2 weeks behind her," Liam said. Frustration, a metallic taste in his mouth, at least. But we found something else. The P.O. box was opened under the name Anna Hayes. Hayes was her maiden name. Anna Hayes, a new name for a new life. She was systematically erasing Isabella Sterling. The coolness of it, the sheer audacity, fueled the narrative Clara had so carefully constructed. He thanked Herrera and hung up, his jaw tight. He looked at the vast, empty penthouse. All the objects, the art, the furniture, they felt like props on a stage for a play whose star had walked off. He had bought all of this to impress the world and to possess her. He saw it now. He had treated her like this apartment, something to acquire, curate, and display. He had never once wondered what lay behind her sad, beautiful eyes. Clara, in her own way, was doing the same to him. She wasn't trying to build a life with him. She was trying to acquire his. The realization was fleeting, quickly buried beneath the easier, more digestible anger. Clara was here. Isabella was gone. He chose the lie because the truth was a mirror he couldn't bear to look into. 4. The collapse. The cracks in Liam Sterling's meticulously constructed world began to show. The search for Isabella had become a consuming obsession, a background process that drained his focus and energy. At work, he was a ghost haunting the main office floor, his mind perpetually elsewhere. The deals he once would have pursued with predatory zeal now felt meaningless. His empire, the monument to his ambition, felt like an empty shell. He started seeing her everywhere. A pregnant woman crossing the street would make his heart clench, only to be followed by a wave of disappointment. The smell of rain on hot pavement would transport him back to their first date, a memory he hadn't accessed in years. He was unraveling, thread by thread, and he didn't know how to stop it. The tipping point came during the quarterly board meeting of Sterling Corporation. It was the culmination of the Hartwell deal. His crowning achievement. It was supposed to be triumphant, powerful, in control. But as he stood at the head of the sleek mahogany table, the faces of his board members blurred. The numbers on the projector screen swam before his eyes. All he could see was the empty space where Isabella should have been, cheering him on from the sidelines, as she always did. Her quiet pride, a stabilizing force he had always taken for granted. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. His carefully prepared speech about profit margins and future growth felt like a foreign language. He gripped the edge of the table. A sudden wave of dizziness washed over him. "Liam, are you all right?" Roberto, a longtime board member, asked, his face etched with concern. Liam looked at the staring faces, men he had known for years, men who respected and feared him, and he felt nothing but a deep, crushing emptiness. The empire meant nothing. The deal meant nothing. He had conquered the world, but he had lost his wife and his child, and he didn't even know why. A hot tear slid down his cheek, then another. He stood there, in front of his board of directors, the titans of industry, and began to weep. Not silent, dignified tears, but wrenching, gut-deep sobs that shook his entire body. It was the sound of a man falling apart. The room fell into stunned, horrified silence. Roberto quickly stood, ushering the bewildered board members out, leaving Liam alone in his glass-walled cage, completely undone. Clara found him there hours later, sitting in the darkness, the city lights shining mockingly outside. The story of his collapse had already spread through their social circle. She had come to do damage control, to save her investment. "Liam, darling," she said, her voice low and cooing. She knelt before him, placing a hand on his knee. "It's all right. You're under an immense amount of stress. Anyone would break." He looked at her with red, sunken eyes. He saw the calculation in her gaze, the ambition that always pulsed just beneath the surface. He saw the carefully applied mask of sympathy, and for the first time, her touch felt alien, repulsive. "She did this to you?" Clara whispered, seizing the opportunity to deepen the rift. "This is what she wanted, to destroy you." But her words had lost their power. The lie, which had been such a comfortable shield, now felt flimsy and false. He knew with a certainty that sliced through his pain that Isabella had never wanted to destroy him. She had only wanted to save herself. The cruelty was his. The neglect was his. The failure was his. "No," he said, his voice raw. He pulled her hand away. It was a small gesture, but it felt seismic. "It wasn't her. It was me." Clara recoiled slightly, her mask slipping for a fraction of a second. Surprise, then irritation flashed in her eyes. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to be angry at Isabella, not himself. He was supposed to turn to her for comfort, cementing her place by his side. "Don't be ridiculous, Liam," she snapped, her voice losing its sympathetic softness. "You can't blame yourself for her manipulation." "Was it manipulation?" he asked, the question aimed more at himself than her. Or was it desperation? Did I ever, even once, ask her what she wanted? Did I ever look at her, truly look at her, and see the person instead of the prize? The truth of it, the shame of it, washed over him. He remembered the law books Heiress had found. He remembered her passion, the fire in her eyes when they first met. A fire he had systematically extinguished with his casual indifference. He had taken a vibrant, brilliant woman and tried to turn her into a beautiful object. And he had been succeeding. Her act of disappearance was not an attack. It was an act of survival. He was crying again. But these tears were different. They weren't for the loss of his possession or the blow to his pride. They were tears of pure, unadulterated grief. Grief for the woman he had never known. Grief for the love he had thrown away. Grief for the child who would be born in some anonymous town, who would never know his father. A father who only now, in his absence, was beginning to understand what it meant to love him. Clara stood up, her face a mask of cold fury. She was an architect of power, and she recognized a faulty structure when she saw one. The man sobbing before her was not the ruthless titan she had set out to conquer. He was just a broken man. "Get a grip, Liam," she said, her voice like ice. "This is pathetic." He didn't even look at her. He simply sat there among the ruins of his perfect life, weeping a loss he was only beginning to comprehend. The mistress, the victor, stood over him, but her prize had turned to dust in her hands. She had never imagined the great Liam Sterling would weep. She was right. He wasn't crying for her, or even for himself. He was crying for Isabella. And in that moment, Clara knew with chilling certainty that she had lost. The quiet sanctuary, 2,000 miles away, where the mist-shrouded pines of Oregon meet the raw, churning power of the Pacific Ocean. Isabella Sterling was gone. In her place was Anna Navarro. The name felt strange and liberating on her tongue. A clean slate. She had found her way to the small coastal town of Cannon Beach, a place of rugged fishing boats, charmingly weathered Victorian houses, and a quiet anonymity that felt like balm to her bruised soul. Her new home was a tiny second-floor apartment above a quiet bookstore, with windows overlooking the Nicanicum River as it flowed into the sea. It was a world away from the silent, opulent penthouse. Here, the silence was different. It was filled with the cry of gulls, the distant clang of a ship's bell, and the soothing rustle of turning pages from the shop below. The air smelled of salt, rain, and old paper, a scent she found more intoxicating than any designer perfume. The first few weeks had been a blur of fear and adrenaline. Every siren made her jump. Every look from a stranger felt like scrutiny. But as days turned into weeks, the fear began to recede, replaced by a tentative, burgeoning peace. She had furnished her apartment with second-hand finds, every piece chosen for its comfort and character, not its ostentation. A comfortable, overstuffed armchair, a sturdy wooden table scarred with the history of other people's lives, a quilt made by a local artisan. For the first time in a decade, she was surrounded by things that felt like hers. She had secured a part-time job at the bookstore downstairs. It was owned by Margarita, a woman in her 60s with a cloud of white hair, ink-stained hands, and eyes that held a deep, wise kindness. Margarita hadn't asked for references or questioned the story of the quiet, heavily pregnant woman who had walked into her shop one day. She had simply seen something in Anna's eyes, a love for books, a need for sanctuary, and offered her the job on the spot. "The pay is terrible, the hours are long, and the customers will ask you the most ridiculous questions," Margarita had said, with a wry smile. "But the company is good." She had gestured to the towering bookshelves of novels. "They never let you down." Anna's days fell into a soft, predictable rhythm. She woke early, watched the fishing boats head out in the dawn light, her hands cradling her belly as her son kicked and shifted within her. She worked in the shop, recommending novels, dusting shelves. The aroma of old paper and binding glue became her new reality. She talked to locals, fishermen, artists, retirees, people whose lives were anchored in the tides and the seasons, not the stock market. They were curious but respectful, accepting her as the quiet new woman in town. No one asked about a husband or a diamond ring. They only asked how she was feeling and if she needed help carrying groceries up the stairs. She was rediscovering the woman she had been before Liam, the woman who found joy in a perfectly crafted sentence, who could spend hours debating legal theory, who believed in a world beyond material wealth. The fire she thought had been extinguished was slowly, tentatively, being reignited. One rainy afternoon, as she was shelving a new shipment of books, Margarita brought her a cup of chamomile tea. "You look happier these last few days, dear," Margarita observed, her gaze soft. "The color is coming back to your cheeks." Anna smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes. "I feel lighter," she admitted. "I feel like I can finally breathe. Sometimes you have to travel a long way to find a place where the air fits your lungs," Margarita said wisely. She paused, then added, "This is a good place to raise a child. People look out for each other here." The simple statement, offered without a hint of pity or curiosity, brought tears to Anna's eyes. It was the validation she didn't know she needed. She was not a runaway wife or a tragic figure. She was a woman building a new life, a mother preparing a safe harbor for her son. She often thought of Liam, but the memories became less painful, more distant. She did not hate him. In her new clarity, she mostly felt a deep pity for him. He was trapped in a cage of his own making, a prisoner to the ambition that drove him. She hoped for his sake that he would find a way out someday. But his journey was no longer hers. Her focus was on the future, on the imminent arrival of her son. She had purchased a simple wooden crib from a local carpenter and painted it a soft, sunny yellow. She knit a small blue blanket, her stitches uneven, but full of love. She attended a local prenatal group, sharing her hopes and fears with other expectant mothers. Their backgrounds a tapestry of different lives, all bound together by the universal experience of creation. Lying in bed one night, listening to the rain tap against the window glass, she felt her son give a particularly strong kick. She put her hand on her belly and whispered, "It's just you and me, little one. We are going to be fine." And for the first time, she believed it with every fiber of her being. She had exchanged a gilded cage for a small room with a view of the sea. And in doing so, she had found a wealth that Liam Sterling could never comprehend. She had found herself, and she was finally, truly home. 6. The Tycoon's final surrender back in New York. The fallout from Liam's collapse in the boardroom was swift and brutal. The whispers Clara had so carefully cultivated about Isabella's instability now redirected themselves onto him. The story changed. Liam Sterling, the Titan, was buckling under pressure. His judgment was compromised. The carefully constructed facade of impenetrable strength had shattered, and the sharks were circling. Clara, seeing her future prospects dim with every rumor, shifted her strategy from seduction to damage control, and finally, to desperation. Her plan had been to seamlessly slide into the role of the new Mrs. Sterling, the woman who had saved Liam from his tragic marriage. But the man she was dealing with now was not the confident predator who had drawn her in. He was apathetic, tormented, and worst of all, uninterested in her. She decided a direct confrontation was her only remaining maneuver. She cornered him in the penthouse one evening, dressed not in a seductive cocktail dress, but in a sleek, severe pantsuit, as if preparing for a hostile negotiation. "We need to talk, Liam," she began, her tone clipped and devoid of her usual warmth. He was standing by the window, sipping a glass of scotch, a nightly ritual that had become his only solace. He did not turn to face her. "I'm tired, Clara." "I'm sure you are," she snapped. "But your little performance at the office has created a massive problem for both of us. Roberto is calling for an emergency meeting to discuss your leadership." "Your leadership, Liam? Do you have any idea how much work I've put into this? Into us?" The raw, undiluted greed in her voice finally broke through his melancholy haze. He turned slowly, looking at her, as if seeing her for the first time. He saw the hard ambition in her gaze, the ruthless calculation, and in that moment, he saw a perfect, terrifying reflection of himself. She wasn't his partner. She was his protégé, his image in the mirror. She wanted the power, the prestige, the name. She didn't want him, the broken man in front of her. She wanted the Liam Sterling brand, the brand. "This was never about us, was it?" he said, his voice quiet, heavy, with a kind of weary realization. "It was about you." Clara let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Oh, don't you dare try to take the moral high ground with me. You and I are the same, Liam. We see what we want, and we take it. I wanted you, your world, and I was on the verge of getting it. Don't you think I've earned that?" "She didn't abandon me," he said, the words tasting like truth. "She escaped." "She fled like a coward," Clara spat out, her composure finally cracking. "She left you and took your son." "Did she?" Liam countered, taking a step closer, his eyes clear for the first time in months. "Or did I drive her away? Did I create a home so cold, a life so empty, that running into the unknown with nothing was a better option? Did I ever love her, Clara? Or did I just own her?" He wasn't truly asking her. He was voicing the questions that had been tormenting him in the dead night. He saw it all with nauseating clarity now. Isabella's quiet sadness, her forced smiles, her retreat into a world of her own. They weren't signs of weakness. They were symptoms of his own failure. Clara stared at him, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. This was her endgame, and he was rewriting the rules. "I don't have time for your existential crisis, Liam," she said, her voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. "You need to control this situation. Issue a statement. Blame Isabella. Tell the world she's mentally unstable and that you are the victim. Reclaim your power, or you will lose everything, and I will not sink with you." It was an ultimatum, a last desperate maneuver. She was trying to appeal to the old Liam, the man who valued power and control above all else. But that man was a ghost. He looked at her, this beautiful, brilliant, ruthless woman, and felt a profound sense of pity. She was still trapped in the game he was finally beginning to see a way out of. "It's over, Clara," he said, his voice expressionless, definitive. "What did you say?" "Our arrangement, it's over. I want you to pack your things and leave. From the firm, from this building, from my life." Clara's face paled. Then it flushed with fury. "You can't be serious. After everything, you choose her? A woman who isn't even here?" "I'm not choosing her," he said quietly. "I'm choosing something else, something better. I'm choosing to stop being the man who deserved to be abandoned." He turned his back on her, a gesture of contempt more powerful than any shout, and looked back at the city. He heard her gasp, a choked sound of pure fury. There was a moment of charged silence, and then the sound of her heels, clicking angrily across the marble floor, the slam of the door echoing through the vast, empty apartment. He was alone, truly alone. The mistress was gone. The wife was gone. But for the first time since Isabella had disappeared, He didn't feel a sense of loss. He felt a strange, terrifying, and exhilarating sense of freedom. He had finally hit rock bottom, and the only way left was up. A new dawn in Vivero. 1 month after the confrontation with Clara, Mr. Herrera requested one last meeting. "The trail is cold, Mr. Sterling," he said, going straight to the point. "She was always 2 steps ahead. She's a ghost, in my professional opinion. I would advise you to stop for your own sake. Let her go." The old Liam would have railed, thrown more money at the problem, refusing to accept defeat. But the man sitting opposite Herrera simply nodded, a strange calmness washing over him. The investigator's words were not a defeat. They were a form of permission to stop fighting a war he had already lost, a war he himself had started. "Thank you, Herrera," he said, his voice even. "For everything." The search was over. Isabella was truly gone. Instead of the crushing despair he had anticipated, Liam felt a quiet sense of peace. The frantic energy that had consumed him for months dissipated, leaving a vast, tranquil space in its wake. The obsession had been a shield, a way to avoid looking at the wreckage of his own life. Now there was nothing left to do but survey the damage. He started small. He sold the penthouse. The gilded cage held too many ghosts, too many reminders of his failures. He moved into a smaller, nondescript apartment downtown, a place with warm wood floors and walls. He filled not with investment art, but with photographs of his parents, his sister, a childhood he had left behind long ago. He began the slow, painful work of repairing the relationships his ambition had corroded. He called his younger sister Sarah, who he hadn't spoken to in over a year. He apologized without excuses or justification. The silence on the line was long, and then her voice, thick with emotion, said, "I've missed you, Rich." It was a start. He retired from the day-to-day operations of his company, promoting a capable executive to take his place. He found that the relentless pursuit of the next deal, the next conquest, no longer held any appeal. The board, having witnessed his collapse and subsequent retreat, was relieved. He was still the owner, but he was no longer the king. He started walking the city, not with a destination in mind, but just to see it, to feel its rhythm. He noticed the street musicians, the laughter of children in the parks, the small, everyday human dramas he had been blind to from the tinted windows of his chauffeured car. On a Saturday, on a whim, he walked into a soup kitchen, a place he previously would have only engaged with by writing a large, tax-deductible check. At first he was clumsy, a man in a cashmere sweater completely out of his element. But he was put to chopping vegetables, his hands, more accustomed to signing contracts, becoming calloused and raw. He listened to the stories of the people he served, stories of hardship, loss, and incredible resilience. He felt a sense of connection, of shared humanity, that his wealth had always insulated him from. He was changing. The grief for Isabella and his child had not vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer a frantic, angry obsession, but a quiet, persistent ache in his heart, a reminder of the man he had been and the man he was trying to become. He wasn't doing these things to find her or to earn her forgiveness. He was doing them for himself. He was trying to build a life that the woman she had become might not have needed to escape. He thought of the child. His son would be almost 2 now. Liam pictured him in his mind, a toddler with Isabella's serious eyes and perhaps his own stubborn chin. He wondered if the boy was happy, if he was loved. He knew with a certainty that brought him both pain and comfort that with Isabella as his mother, the answer was yes. He had missed the birth, the first steps, the first words. He had forfeited the right to be a father, but he could still become a good man. Perhaps in the end, that was a kind of redemption. His heart, once closed off and armored, was slowly, painfully opening to a world he had never truly seen. 3 years passed. The new Liam Sterling was a quieter, more reflective man. His business still thrived, but remotely, managed by others. His life was simpler, his wealth a tool for quiet philanthropy rather than a weapon of ego. The ache in his heart for his lost son and the wife he never truly knew remained, but it had settled into a part of his landscape, a sad, beautiful feature that reminded him how far he had come. He was in Boston for a conference on sustainable urban development, a passion project he had become deeply involved in. The conference ended a day early, and he found himself with a rare, unstructured 24 hours. On an impulse he couldn't explain, he rented a car and began driving north, toward the coast. He didn't have a destination in mind, just a pull toward the ocean, toward the vast gray expanse of the Atlantic. He drove through forests of towering pines, the air growing cooler, tinged with the scent of salt and damp earth. He ended up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a charming, historic town, clinging to the hillside where the river met the ocean. He felt a sense of peace there, a feeling of being at the edge of the world. He walked the waterfront, watching the seagulls cry, and felt a strange sense of belonging, of stillness. He wandered down the town's main street, filled with antique shops and small cafes. A bookstore with a quaint, hand-painted sign reading "Margarita's Books" caught his eye. He walked in, the chime of a small bell announcing his arrival. The interior was warm and cluttered, smelling wonderfully of old paper and wood smoke from a small stove in the corner. He browsed the shelves, his fingers tracing the spines of well-loved novels, and then he heard it, the voice of a woman, soft and clear, reading a children's book. "The moon is high, the stars are bright. Sleep now, little one, and dream of the light." The voice was achingly familiar. His heart began to pound, a frantic, hammering rhythm against his ribs. He moved slowly, cautiously, toward the children's section at the back of the shop, and there she was. She was sitting in a small rocking chair, a toddler with a mop of dark, curly hair nestled in her lap. It was Isabella, but it was also not Isabella. Her hair was shorter. Her face was bare of makeup, marked with fine lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and worry. She wore a simple sweater and jeans. She looked real, grounded. The fragile, porcelain beauty of Isabella Sterling had been replaced by the vibrant, warm presence of this woman. Anna, the toddler in her lap, looked up, and Liam's breath caught. The child had his chin, his dark hair, but his eyes were all hers. Large, serious, and intelligent. This was his son. She finished the book and closed it, kissing the top of the child's head. She looked up then, and her eyes met Liam's across the cluttered bookshelves. For a long moment, the world stopped. There was no shock on her face, no fear, just a flicker of recognition followed by a deep, quiet sadness. And then, something that looked like acceptance. He didn't know what to do, what to say. The script he had rehearsed 1,000 times in his mind, of anger, of pleading, of demanding, vanished. That script was for a different man, for a different woman. She stood up, gently taking the child's hand. "Leo, this is an old friend of Mommy's," she said, her voice steady. Liam knelt, bringing himself to the child's eye level. "Hello, Leo," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "It's nice to meet you." Leo stared at him with his mother's solemn eyes. Then he gave a shy smile. "Isabella, Anna," he spoke then, his voice quiet. "What are you doing here, Liam?" It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple question. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I think maybe I was looking for a quiet place to be." I didn't know I was looking for you." They stood in the silence of the bookstore, the air thick with unspoken years of pain, growth, and change. "He's beautiful," Liam whispered, his gaze fixed on Leo. "He is," she agreed softly. "He's happy. He's safe." It was both an affirmation and a reassurance, a certainty that she had made the right choice. He finally looked back at her, at this woman, who was both a stranger and the most important person in his world. And he knew this wasn't a moment for grand gestures or dramatic reunions. This wasn't about reclaiming what he had lost. That life, that marriage, was over. They were now two entirely different people, shaped by the separate paths they had traveled. "I'm sorry, Isabella," he said, and the name felt foreign now. "For everything, for the man I was, for not seeing you. I'm so profoundly sorry." A single tear slipped down her cheek, but she wasn't sad. It was a tear of release. "I know, Liam," she said. "I forgave you a long time ago." The ending was not what he had envisioned. There would be no triumphant return, no reconciliation. But as he stood in that quiet bookstore, looking at the woman his wife had become and the son he was meeting for the first time, he felt a profound sense of hope. This was not an end. It was an unforeseen, quiet connection, a chance, perhaps not to rebuild what was broken, but to build something new, something honest, from the ground up. It was a quiet, unexpected, and deeply inspiring beginning. The story of Liam and Isabella shows us that true growth often begins only when we have the courage to let go of the life we planned. Their journey wasn't about finding their way back to each other, but about finding their way back to themselves. If their story of transformation and second chances has moved you, please like this content so it can reach more people. Share it with someone who might need this message. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life romantic fiction that explores the depths of the human heart. Thank you for watching.